religious traditions. In addition, these efforts must be complemented by a deliberate, long-term strategy to mobilize the power of religion, including the support of people of goodwill of every faith and nation in a global movement to attain this objective. We need more than talk, we need action, we need more than words, we need a concerted, practical strategy. That is why Pakyaya, why Kiai Haji Yakulil Stakuf, why Nahdlatul Ulama, why the Center for Shared Civilizational Values, why the R20 have convened this gathering, not just to talk, but to act, to organize, to sustain a global movement. Through the R20 International Summit of Religious Authorities today and through other mechanisms, we urge religious leaders of every faith and nation to marshal and mobilize the collective power of their respective communities to impact decision-making circles, to halt armed conflicts raging in the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, Eastern Europe, and other regions of the world, and develop effective mechanisms for dialogue and negotiation that may lead towards the peaceful resolution of such conflicts. To begin our discussion this afternoon, I'm delighted that our dear friend, Rabbi Silvina Chemen, coming to us all the way from Argentina, will be speaking about transcending annihilationist rhetoric from the book of Joshua to Rahmanah. Rabbi Silvina Chemen is known to many of us. Rabbi Silvina participated and was a plenary speaker in the R20 Summit in Bali last year. She is currently a rabbi in the Betel community in Buenos Aires, Argentina, together with Rabbi Daniel Goldman since 2006. She received her ordination from the Latin American Rabbinical Seminary. She is a graduate of Hebrew language and Bible from the Michelet Shazar, and she has a Bachelor of Science in Communication from the University of Buenos Aires. She has served in several Jewish communities in Buenos Aires as a Jewish educator and liturgical and rabbinical assistant. She's extremely active and a leader in interfaith dialogue and the building up of interfaith relations in Argentina and Latin America and indeed the world. She has, since the tragedy of October 7th, been traveling the world, in a sense, conducting her own personal pilgrimage of peace. She traveled to Europe just a few weeks ago. She's with us. I think she had the most difficult and the longest journey of anyone to reach Jakarta today. And she will also be joining us when we convene at Princeton University next month for another installment of a series of dialogues and conversations and conferences to strengthen a rules-based international order in the face of numerous challenges. She and several of us actually will be at Princeton on December 13 and 14 in conjunction with the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights to discuss the future of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and how religious leaders can mobilize their traditions and their communities in support of the post-war human rights regime. So Rabbi Silvina, welcome. We're delighted and inexpressibly grateful to you for your making the trip and for your sharing your thoughts with us this afternoon. Welcome.
Dear brothers and sisters, really, brothers and sisters, in the face of the emergency arising from the unlimited violence and fundamentalisms that mark today's international agenda, the decision to convene us here again fills my soul with hope. The topic I am challenged to address is transcending annihilationist rhetoric, from the book of Joshua to Rahmanah. The book of Joshua is filled with conquest and battles. It is part of the first Old Testament, which tells of the return of the people of Israel to their land after their oppressive slavery in Egypt and how Joshua led that conquest. On the other hand, Rahmanah is a term from Aramaic that can be translated as the merciful one or the compassionate one. It encapsulates the divine attribute of mercy that emphasizes empathy, forgiveness, and benevolence. It is not my intention to provide theological justification for the events in the book of Joshua. What is written is the biblical editor's record of the events that occurred in his context from his perspective of faith, land, and people. I am here to debate on what we do with this narrative, and moreover, what we do with the rhetoric of annihilation in our respective traditions in general. Opting for a literal interpretation and attempting to justify any form of violence through it is inconsistent with the spiritual maturity that our traditions have attained. But avoiding taking responsibility for it is not the solution either. When we talk about rhetoric, we talk about the manipulation of language to locate in the past a truth that enables what is done in the present. We are not our ancestors, nor those of us who wrote this text, which surely contain extreme stereotype languages typical of an era from which there are no traces left to be able to access the ultimate truth. However, we are the ones who read the texts, and it depends on where we shine the light on it to criticize, denounce, or justify every act of human indignity. There are probably some who expressly make a direct relationship with the atrocities that are happening in our Holy Land. And in so doing, they dehumanize the actual tragedy, a tragedy in which we are all victims. Attributing to the Jewish people a rhetoric of annihilation, saying that the God of Israel is bloody thirsty, warlike, and violent, is nothing more than anti-Semitism. Today, the Holy Land, threatened by terrorist groups, is going through an unusual chapter of its history, and we are here to propose other narratives that allow us to get out of this dead end. The fixation on speeches of hate and annihilation obscures our vision, preventing us from recalling instances that transcend the grim reality of war. There are other possibilities, other possible readings within the book of Joshua. For example, let us focus on the story of the walls of Jericho as a metaphor of our role today. Jericho had impenetrable walls. God commanded Joshua to circle the walls. As the people surrounded Jericho, their faith manifested in a symbolic presence of the sacred ark, a tangible connection to the divine. Remarkably, the priests, the religious leaders, were the ones who led the way, emphasizing a trust in somebody beyond the immediate human pursuit of territory or political ideals. This is a clear element in the narrative of the book of Joshua, and it is also a role we could assume in our difficult times. In this unlikely setting, expressions of tenderness, trust, and mercy emerged. You may remember the story of Rahab, a Canaanite woman who pledged to protect the Israelite spies, thereby saving the lives of her people, stand as a beacon of compassion in the midst of adversity. According to the later rabbinic tradition, she went on to marry Joshua. Other narratives, as in the Gospel of Matthew, recounted that Rahab married a prince of the tribe of Judah and became the mother of Boaz, who in turn married Ruth, the grandmother of King David, thus connecting Rahab to the lineage of the Messiah. This narrative serves as a poignant reminder that even in the darkest moments, acts of kindness and the resilience of humanity save us from devastation. With humility, I invite us to transcend narratives that endorse annihilation, urging us to glimpse
Reverend Paolo Cristiano, who comes to us from Italy. He is a representative of the community of Sant'Egidio, and I'm very happy to say that the community of Sant'Egidio, which was founded in 1968, has had a long relationship with Nahdlatul Ulama, including with Gus Dur, His Excellency President Abdurrahman Wahid, and that relationship was recently renewed as we now have a new memorandum of understanding with Sant'Egidio, between Sant'Egidio and Nahdlatul Ulama. So it's wonderful to have you here representing the community of Sant'Egidio. Reverend Cristiano is a coordinator of Sant'Egidio for Asia. He works for interreligious dialogue in Pakistan, and he has been part of the ultimately successful peace process in Mindanao, Philippines. He is a professor of biblical theology and of wisdom books and a parish priest in the cathedral in Frosinone, Italy. Welcome to you, Father Cristiano.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the community of Sant'Egidio and of its president, Marco Impagliazzo, I'd like to thank Chairman Chiaia Yastakuf for inviting me to this prestigious conference. I'm honored to reflect together with so many illustrious personalities, bringing the experience of the spirit of Assisi, which continues to blow despite many difficulties since 1986 on the initiative of John Paul II. Our meeting starts from a concrete question: how to de-weaponize, how to disarm the hearts and the minds of the people. It's an important question because it places the urgency of wars and thoughts of peace back in the center. Interest in peace must be resurrected, while instead war is too easily accepted as an unavoidable reality. Peace will not be achieved through rituals of diplomacy alone. In order to build it, we must start again from situation of war, without accepting them with resignation, even if they must be faced with realism. Citizens like us of countries in peace can do a lot using their possibility of pressure and communication. The sociologist Bauman wrote, "The dense network of interdependencies makes us all objectively responsible for the suffering of others. All of us, exponents of these different religions, are called to act both at a global and a local level. This has a great value in urban suburbs and in the fragmented reality of the society, where bonds often die. The death of the neighbor occurs there, as an Italian scholar has said. It is increasingly necessary to recreate a human and community fabric in conflictual and fragmented societies and suburbs. And there, precisely there, religions have a fundamental role. Faced with the horror of the resumption of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but also of the other conflicts in Ukraine, in Yemen, in Afghanistan, and in so many other places, it is urgent to ask ourselves, what to do? What can I do? This is why we are here, dear brothers and sisters. Many roads seem blocked. War, however, solves nothing. We cannot live as if the other side were destined to disappear. This is the thought of the extremists of the two camps, but it is a terrible utopia. After 75 years of war, we must note the futility of further clashes in the Holy Land, which only produce hatred and suffering. The Abraham Accords, which seemed like a real possibility, turned out to be incomplete. You cannot bet only on money and future prosperity. Wounds are too many and too deep. Something more is needed to vocalize the feelings of injustice and fear of both parties there as a premise for a new meeting. In globalization, in fact, we have placed too much trust in the material aspect of life, believing that it may solve almost everything. We need a different culture then. We need the audacity of peace. Great powers must find the courage to imagine peace, looking beyond the obstacles of the present and beyond tense or cooled relationship. We, as men and women of religion, have the power of the powerless. It is the power to change the hearts, the minds, to turn them to thoughts and actions of peace. But this goal can only be achieved together. We need an alliance of religions for peace. The practice of not speaking to anyone considered hostile or competitive has become widespread in our society. One tends only to speak to his or her own peers, the like-minded. We, as men and women of faith, know that true dialogue, useful and productive, is with the different ones, even with the enemy, to de-weaponize his or her heart and thus his or her actions. It takes boldness today to find a consensus on peace and stability. Otherwise, there'll be a future of repeated wars. The path to peace is complex, and it will be difficult to reach the necessary compromises. For this reason, there must be so many actors on this path, without excluding anyone. Thus, Pope Francis and great Imam Tayyip encouraged us in the document of human fraternity, I quote, to remain rooted in the values of peace, to defend the values of mutual understanding, human fraternity, and harmonious coexistence, to reestablish wisdom, justice, and love, end quote. Dear friends, the community of Sant'Egidio is ready to support concrete efforts of dialogue and peace, as we declared in the MOU that binds us fraternally to the Nahdlatul Ulama. I quote, "We are committed to promoting and supporting our respective humanitarian efforts in support of people in distress. These efforts shall address the needs of the most vulnerable members of society impacted by armed conflicts," end quote. And as believers of different religions, we are not afraid. We are not afraid to use the most powerful weapon of all, that is prayer, which can move mountains of hatred and violence so that peace can shine again. Thank you.
Thank you. Grazie. Thank you very much indeed, Father Cristiano. It's truly wonderful that you're here to represent the community of Sant'Egidio, which has been one of the most consequential organizations in the world, operating on a religious foundation for the sake of peace. Sant'Egidio has played an important role in bringing peace to conflicts around the world, including in Mozambique and many others that we could name. So thank you very much for bringing that beautiful message from the community of Sant'Egidio. I'm now delighted to introduce a great eminent scholar from Nahdlatul Ulama who will be speaking to us now, Kiai Haji Afifuddin Muhajir, who is a close associate of Gus Yahya, General Chairman of the Central Board of Nahdlatul Ulama. Kiai Haji Afifuddin Muhajir is Vice General Chairman of the Nahdlatul Ulama Supreme Council. He is among Nahdlatul Ulama's most eminent and distinguished theologians. He's playing an extremely important role in Nahdlatul Ulama's systematic and long-term effort to recontextualize classical tenets of Islamic orthodoxy in accordance with humanitarian ethics and justice. He is involved in major initiatives, theological initiatives with Nahdlatul Ulama, and we are thrilled and delighted that he's here with us to speak to us. So thank you very much, Kiai Haji Afifuddin Muhajir. The floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawala wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah amma ba'du. Ayyuhal mukarramun al-muhtaramun wa khussu bil-dhikri al-mutahaddithin al-kiram wa aqulu huna bi-ikhtisarin innal amana silwul iman wassalamu silwul islam wa aqulu aidan al-mu'minu akhul mu'min wal muslimu akhul muslim wal insanu akhul insan fahadihi thalathu ukhuwatun imaniyah wa ukhuwatun islamiyah وأخوة إنسانية وعلى كل واحدة من هذه الأخوات أخوات دليل أو أدلة من القرآن والسنة وقد قال الله تعالى إنما المؤمنون إخوة وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم المسلم أخو المسلم وفي صلة الأخوة الإنسانية قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يا أيها الناس ألا إن ربكم واحد وإن أباكم واحد ألا لا فضل لعربي على عجمي ولا لعجمي على عربي ولا أحمر على أسود ولا أسود على أحمر إلا بالتقوى وروى الإمام أحمد في مسنده عن زيد بن أرقم رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول دبر كل صلاة اللهم ربنا ورب كل شيء ومليكه أنا شهيد أنك الله وحدك لا شريك لك اللهم ربنا ورب كل شيء ومليكه أنا شهيد أن محمدا عبدك ورسولك اللهم ربنا ورب كل شيء ومليكه أنا شهيد أن العباد كلهم إخوة رواه أبو داود فإن لم تكن بين المرء وصاحبه أخوة إيمانية ولا أخوة إسلامية فإن بينهما بدون شك أخوة إنسانية والأخوة الإنسانية وحدها من شأنها أن تبعث الإنسان أن يحب أخاه وإن لم يكن الواقع كما هو المتوقع فلا أقل من ألا يقتل الإنسان أخاه الإنسان ولا يظلمه ولا يقتله ولا يقاتله والقتال فضلا عن القتل ممنوع منه في الإسلام فبدلا من الإذن في مواجهة الظالمين بالعنف والقتال أمر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بالدعاء إلى الله والصبر على الأذى والصبح عن الجاهل ثم أذن فيه بعد أن استمر الناس في الطغيان وعتت قريش على الله تعالى وكذبوا نبيه وعذبوا من آمن به فالقتال في الإسلام مسموح أخيرا بعد أن كان ممنوعا في صلة حفظ الأمان والسلام ومنع الظلم الواقع أو المتوقع فقد قال الله تعالى أذن للذين يقاتلون بأنهم ظلموا وإن الله على نصرهم لقدير ولولا دفع الله الناس بعضهم ببعض لهدمت صوامع وبيع وصلوات ومساجد يذكر فيها اسم الله كثيرا هذا يعني فلولا أن الله تعالى دافع عن المظلومين بالإذن في قتال الظالمين لهدمت مواضع العبادات كالصوامع والبيع والصلوات والمساجد التي ذكر اسم الله فيها كثيرا. وتحقيق السلام والحفاظ عليه لا بد له من مقومات وشروط، وأحوج ما يكون إليه هو العدل في التعامل بين الناس. فالعدل في التعامل بين الناس شرط أساسي لتحقيق السلام والحفاظ عليه. وجاءت في سورة النحل دعوة لافتة إلى العمل بالعدل المطلق، حيث أمر الله سبحانه وتعالى بالقيام بالعدل حتى مع قوم اشتد البغض لهم. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى: ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا. قال الإمام الرازي في تفسير هذه الآية: والمعنى لا يحملنكم بغض قوم على أن تجوروا عليهم وتجاوزوا الحد فيهم، بل اعدلوا فيهم وإن أساءوا عليكم، وأحسنوا إليهم وإن بالغوا في إيحاشكم. فهذا خطاب عام، ومعناه أمر الله تعالى جميع الخلق بأن لا يعاملوا أحدا إلا على سبيل العدل والإنصاف وترك الميل والظلم والاعتصام. وأوجب الله تعالى إدانة الظالم كائنا من كان، وتبرئة المظلوم كائنا من كان. ومما يلفت الانتباه قصة رائعة، وهي قضية خصومة بين تئمة بن أميرك وهو مسلم وبين رجل آخر وهو يهودي. وأتى في القضية أن تئمة سرق درعا لجار له، فلما طلب الدرع منه رمى واحدا من اليهود بتلك السرقة. ولما اشتدت الخصومة بين قومه وقوم اليهودي جاء قومه إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وطلبوا منه أن يعينهم على المقصود وأن يلحق هذه الخيانة لهم. ولكن قد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في صدد تبرئة اليهود المظلوم، حيث نزلت هذه الآية تبرئة لهم، وهي قوله تعالى: إنا أنزلنا إليك الكتاب بالحق لتحكم بين الناس بما أراك الله ولا تكن للخائنين خصيما. مرة أخرى أنه يجب تبرئة المظلوم ولو كان يهوديا، وإدانة المسلم وإدانة الظالم ولو كان مسلما. وفي مصطلحات العلوم الإسلامية فن اصطلح عليه الفقهاء والأصوليون بمقاصد الشريعة، وخمسة منها بمثابة أمهات لها، وهي المراد بالكليات الخمس، وهي أعني حفظ الدين وحفظ النفس وحفظ العقل وحفظ المال وحفظ النسل أو العرض. وفي حسن ظني أن هذه الكليات الخمس ليست حكرا على الإسلام، بل يرعاها كل دين على الأرض. فقتل النفس مثلا يراه كل دين جريمة فظيعة، ولا يحله إلا لأجل حفظ النفس أو للقضاء على الفساد في الأرض. وفي ذلك قال الله تعالى: من أجل ذلك كتبنا على بني إسرائيل أنه من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا ومن أحياها فكأنما أحيانا الناس جميعا. ويلاحظ أن الدين لا يساوي الإيمان، فليس كل متدين مؤمنا، وينطبق هذا على الإسلام أيضا، أي إن الإسلام لا يطابق الإيمان، فليس كل مسلم مؤمنا قال الله تعالى قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لم تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا ولما يدخل الإيمان في قلوبكم وإذا كان هناك مشكلة بين المتدينين في تحقيق الأمن وصون السلام فحلها يكمن في الإيمان لا في الدين ولا في التدين فإن التدين المجرد لا ينتج أمنا ولا يصنع استقرارا بل قد يزيد المشكلة بؤسا ويعمق الفجوة ويفاقم الإشكالية وأما الإيمان فإنه ينمي العلاقة الوثيقة بين العبد وربه ويجعل الله حاضرا في عقله وقلبه وروحه وكل خطواته ومن الطبيعي أنه ينتج الإنسانية الأمانة والإطمئنان والاستقرار في شتى المستويات قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا إيمان لمن لا أمانة له وقال والله لا يؤمن والله لا يؤمن والله لا يؤمن قيل ومن يا رسول الله قال الذي لا يأمن جاره بوائقه وقال أيضا لا إيمان لمن لا حياء له فهناك ارتباط متين بين الأمان والإيمان قال الله تعالى الذين آمنوا ولم يلبسوا إيمانهم بظلم أولئك لهم الأمن وهم مهتدون هذا يفيد وهذا يعني أنه لا أمان بدون إيمان وبالإيمان يتحقق الأمان لكن بشرط أن لا يشابه هذا الإيمان بظلم حيث قال الله تعالى ولم يلبسوا إيمانهم بظلم وقضية الصراعات التي تندلع بين حين وآخر في الشرق الأوسط لا تنفصل عن شؤون المسلمين في هذه الأقطار ولكن لا أسيء الظن بالمسلمين هناك بأنهم غير مؤمنين إيمانا صادقا فإن فيهم حسب ما علمت عددا كبيرا من العلماء العاملين والفقهاء المجتهدين والصلحاء المقربين والذي يذهب بنا العجب ألا تتحد كلمتهم ولا تسوى صفوفهم في صدد مواجهة العدوان المشترك والفتنة المشتركة أيها الحاضرون أطلب من حضراتكم المعذرة والمغفرة حيث كنت لا أستطيع أن أزيد عما قد كتبت في هذه العجالة والله الموفق إلى أكمل الطريق والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Shukran, Terima kasih. Thank you very much, Kiai Haji Afufuddin Muhajir. Thank you for that very eloquent set of remarks. I'm sorry that you couldn't complete them, but what we heard was a very, very powerful argument for the priority of justice, just governance of public affairs, and the foundation of justice in piety and peace. Thank you very, very much. Delighted that we now have Venerable Dr. Yon Seng Yet, who is coming to us from Cambodia to now speak. Dr. Yon Seng Yet is president of the Buddhist Association of Cambodia. I'm pleased to say that he joined us very recently here in Jakarta for the ASEAN Intercultural and Interreligious Dialogue Conference. He was one of a number of senior religious authorities from throughout the ASEAN region to participate in that conference. I should say that Dr. Yon Seng Yet is as much a scholar as he is a religious authority. He recently was awarded a postdoctoral degree in philosophy from the Harvard Divinity School in the United States after researching the topic of the Noble Path over several years, going back to 2016. After receiving his degree, he continues to contribute to the development of Buddhist studies in Cambodia through his work as vice rector of the Preah Sihanouk Raja Buddhist University. And we're very honored and delighted to have you, Venerable Dr. Yet.
Thank you. Respected religious leaders, ladies and gentlemen, I have been listening to a lot of many speakers in the morning and learn a lot of things, wisdom from various speakers. I think our conference is very enriched in this sort of collective wisdom from different religious backgrounds. Before I took a flight to Indonesia, I told my friend that I'm going to join the conference, which is all about helping the people in Middle East. My friend asked me, "What are you talking about? Can you do something for Middle East people?" I thought that this question was a very good question, and honestly speaking, I did not have a good answer. I start to see myself something is it sort of worthy to be part of this conference, or just come and say a few words and go back home? Something is going on in Middle East, and we are sitting here in the fancy conference rooms. Is there any impact on them? I have no doubt that the sound of my speech is for sure echoing with the sound of cry for help from the war victims and the cruel shout to carry out the further murdering whom they call enemies. It is a very sad truth, but it is a real truth. And to some extent, this is an organized truth. The truth which had been organized by our fellow human beings to wage a war against each other. In the human history, there has not been a single war which arose without human engagements at all. We human beings do create the wars, and we are the only ones who can end the war, not the others. My dear friends, if we can feel the pains of our enemies, that is the starting point that peace is possible. But the question is how to achieve the peace. I would like to share a few Buddhist perspectives on how can peace be achievable. We are talking a lot about nonviolence. While we are sitting here talking about the nonviolence, the violence is being carried out in the Middle East, especially to the home country of my fellow friends, sit right to me here from Israel, Gaza. And we also talk about the conflict resolution. If we collect the wisdom that we had been listening to our previous speakers, I think it's more than enough to end the war right now in Gaza Strip. But it's a big problem, and it's a failure for us as a human being that we cannot do it right now, like we start the war. I just want to share one Buddhist perspective, how we can promote the cultural understanding and the peaceful coexistence. In order to promote cultural understanding and the peaceful coexistence, a very simple step to begin with is to accept the strangers. I think this sort of teaching is not only in Buddhism, you can find it in each and every religion that we are practicing now. We accept the strangers, the ones who are different from us, the ones who do not share with us the same faith, the ones who do not share with us the same cultural practice, but the one who share with us the same value of humanity. And they are a simple human being like us who walk on the earth with us, but they are not the same as. I think we are different sitting here, from Argentina to Indonesia, Israel, Japan. And this is a great moment that human being can accept the differences. And this is the starting point, that the promotion of cultural understanding and peaceful coexistence started. If we have courage enough to extend our love, our compassion, and our care towards the strangers, more or less we will be accepted. From this moment of acceptance, the mutual respects and coexistence will exist peacefully. To accept the existence of diversity in society is always beautiful, because it always produces the unity, and the unity itself is a path leading to a social interconnectedness. Without interconnectedness, society will be plunged into a chaos and misery. No society can be functional without being interrelated. Actually, we cannot be one. We have to be many in terms of social stability and prosperity. In this sense, all the profound religious teaching can build this bridge, a bridge of social interconnectedness. If any religion does not teach the path of social bridging, that religion is a failed religion for sure. And I think that we should have more institutions engaged in interfaith dialogues, peace-building initiatives, and humanitarian activities locally and globally. If we really want to see the peaceful coexistence to be born into the diversity society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Venerable Yet, for that very incisive and challenging set of remarks. Now, to speak to us is the Reverend Hermie Damons, who comes to us from South Africa. Reverend Damons is another alumnus of the R20 Summit in Bali. He graciously joined us last year representing the great country of South Africa. He is a member of the Executive Council of the Evangelical Alliance of South Africa. And among his many current activities, he currently serves as the chairperson of the National Chaplaincy Board for the Armed Forces, Police, and Prisons for the Republic of South Africa. He's also the board chairman of Radio Pulpit and a director on the board of the Pulpit Media Group. His activities combine service in the church as well as service in government. We're delighted to have you back in Indonesia, Reverend Damons. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shah. Honorable Pak Yaya, esteemed religious leaders, sisters and brothers, I bring you warm greetings from the broad South African Christian community. Thank you so much for having us and affording us the opportunity to share this august platform with you all. I come to you today as one who has survived the tyranny of a regime who for 4 decades were primarily underpinned by a small minority of my nation's people, who in turn was strongly underpinned by their church, their Christian denomination, known as the Dutch Reformed Church of South Africa. The Dutch Reformed Church have, since the dawn of our democracy and our freedom in South Africa, proactively sought to extricate themselves from the historical complicity to the practice of apartheid in South Africa. Their history have become a life lesson for the broader South African church and our communities of faith. In this, I'm happy to report that since their turnaround, they have been welcomed into full communion with the broader South African as well as the global church community. While for the first decade of our newfound democracy, our founding father Nelson Mandela again sought to draw ordained clergy into the service of the state, our esteemed religious leaders soon realized that we need to be intrinsically mindful of our proximity towards the government of the day. And I'm happy to say that they wisely withdrew from this close relationship and cooperation with the state. And thus we, as the faith communities and the church in particular in South Africa, we develop and seek to practice the principle of what we call critical solidarity. We are in critical solidarity with the state. As people of faith, we are active in our support of our elective government. However, we reserve the right to critique the government privately and publicly as and when the need arises. As religious practitioners, we understand that one of our key responsibilities towards the community is for us to be purveyors of hope. In this, we are mindful, as we were recently reminded by one of our local bishops, that we should guard against privatizing hope. In other words, preaching a message of hope that remains exclusive for me and my kin at the exclusion of all others. Our prophetic mission remains to the world at large, and thus our message should always extend beyond our own community, as our sacred text compels us. On a personal note, in my capacity as the ecclesiastical head of our Christian chaplains within our military and police, and with due consideration for my country's active peacekeeping role on the African continent, I always seek to remind these ministers in the service of the state that their service and ministry is not so much to the state, but to God, the communities, and the communities that we are called to serve. Be this at home in South Africa or on deployment across the various theaters of conflict on our continent. In this regard, I wish to share a poignant reflection offered to us by the General Secretary of my organization, the Evangelical Alliance of South Africa, the Reverend Martin Tla. Reverend Tla urges us as communities of faith to consider the imperative of our divine responsibility, especially when we enjoy a position of prominence in our national spaces. He urges us to always ensure that we never use this agency of prominence and favor to abuse and terrorize the other, nor to subversively support such actions by the state or our ethnic groups. Instead, he calls upon us to use this position of influence for the benefit and good of all of humanity, for the glory of God, our Creator. As South Africans, we strive to live by the principle of what we call Ubuntu. Ubuntu loosely translates into I am because we are. By this we understand that our humanity is intrinsically connected and that my overall well-being is dependent upon the survival and the success of the other, irrespective of your race, your gender, or your creed. We therefore owe it to each other to seek the good of the other if we want to build a better world. St. Augustine of Hippo, one of our church fathers, who himself was an African, born on the continent, served out his ministry on the continent and died on the continent of Africa. St. Augustine, in speaking of the mission of the Lord Jesus Christ, said the following. He said, "The Son of God, having become the Son of Man, makes many sons of men the sons of God." May we never forget that our primary mission and ministry as religious leaders has as its primary objective the task of awakening the divine in all of humanity, not merely those who look, dress, and sound like us, but also those who appear to be different to us. I thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Reverend Damons, for that beautiful message, and thank you for your community in South Africa. We're now going to do, as I had suggested earlier, we're going to take a few minutes for dialogue and question and answer. We're about halfway through our panel, and I'd like to invite any of our religious authorities, whether from overseas or from Indonesia, to raise your hand. I think we'll have microphones that can go around. Right after the question and answer, we'll actually hear from a leader from India, a Hindu leader, Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, by video. And I'll just ask our technical crew to make sure the video is ready to be shown once we finish the question and answer session. So I invite anyone who wishes to raise your hand and ask a question or make a comment related to the discussion we've had thus far, or if you'd like to raise a question or make a comment about the discussion we had earlier in plenary session 2, you're most welcome to do that as well. So anyone who would like to ask a question or make a comment, anyone who spoke earlier today, one of our friends from Indonesia who is a religious figure is also welcome to make a comment or ask a question. Anyone on the stage is also welcome to make a comment, impromptu, or ask a question of one of the other panelists. Or if not, then we can continue. Rabbi, did you want to make a comment or ask a question? No. All right then. Well, you had your opportunity, but we will have another opportunity after people are finished, after the panelists have completed their remarks. So now I'm very pleased that a great spiritual figure from India, Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, will be addressing us via video. He was very sorry that he could not join us in person. Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar is a humanitarian, spiritual leader, and an ambassador of peace and human values. Through his life and work, he has inspired millions around the world with a vision of a peaceful and violence-free world. He has designed programs that provide techniques and tools to live a deeper, more joyous life, and has established nonprofit organizations and initiatives that promote peace and understanding, including in some very difficult conflict zones around the world. His associate, Gautam Vig, is a very dear friend of ours and supporter. We're grateful that Sri Sri Ravi Shankar will be addressing us by video. I should also note that Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar collaborated with the great Abdur Rahman Wahid Gusdur in the 2007 Holocaust Conference in Bali, which Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar personally supported and attended. So if the video is ready, we'll hear now from Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. All right, I'm told that the video is still being prepared, so we'll watch that video from Sri Sri Ravi Shankar in just a few minutes after we've heard from more of our panelists. Let me now introduce the Right Reverend Yoshinobu Miyake, who is another friend of ours who is well known to us, who also graced us with his presence at the Bali Summit last year. One of the most senior leaders of the Shinto tradition from Japan, one of Japan's most senior religious leaders. He is a Japanese Shinto priest and scholar. He is chairman of the board of the International Shinto Studies Association. He has represented groups such as the International Association for Religious Freedom, Religions for Peace, and the Japan UN Association at the United Nations. Right Reverend Miyake also served as General Secretary of the G8 Religious Leaders Summit and the International Religious Fellowship. He's the author of numerous books, including Interfaith Worship and Prayer, We Must Pray Together, Kazamidori, How Humanity Has to Confront Infectious Diseases, and Shinto DNA, How Much Do We Know About Japan? Right Reverend Miyake, welcome.
General Chairman of Nahdlatul Ulama and distinguished religious leaders from over the world. It's my great honor to have an opportunity to speak at this R20 ISORA meeting on behalf of the religious leader of Japan. I would also like to pay tribute to the Indonesian people for your strong wishes and hard work to stop the violence currently underway in Gaza Strip and elsewhere. In this regard, not only leaders of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, which have a great influence on the people of the Middle East, but also religious leaders from other parts of the world, such as Buddhism, Taoism, Shintoism, and Hinduism, should contribute to the resolution of this issue not as bystanders, but as the brothers and sisters of the people who are being harmed daily in the Middle East. I believe that it is our responsibility as human beings. Fortunately, the Japanese people have the potential to contribute to the reconciliation between Palestine and Israel. Since there are almost no anti-Semitic sentiment among Japanese people, as seen as Arabic countries, and also no Islamophobic sentiment as seen in the Western countries. For instance, my great-grandfather, the Most Reverend Toshio Miyake, and his Japanese colleague organized the World Conference on Religion and Peace in 1970 for resolving the terrible situation at that time in Vietnam, and supported this remarkable organization financially for many years. Now, I would like to share my views on the religion and violence in today's world. Two approaches are needed to resolve the ongoing problems of excessive violence in Palestine and in Ukraine. The first is the reform of the United Nations, especially the Security Council. The international body is responsible for determining armed conflict between states. As explained in the detail in this ISORA conference concept paper, all UN member states are obliged to abide by the article of the Charter of the United Nations. Unfortunately, however, some member states put their own national interest ahead of compliance with the UN Charter. When the United Nations was founded in 1945, there were only 51 original member states. Today, there are 193, almost 4 times. There is an argument that therefore the capacity of Security Council should be increased. But more important is the urgent need to take away from the permanent members of the Council their privilege of the veto power. Since every Security Council resolution against the invasion of Ukraine has been varied by a Russian veto, and since Security Council resolution related to a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza Strip have been varied by a United States veto, it can be said that the Security Council is now totally dysfunctional. In addition, since 98% of the world arms export are made by these five permanent members of Security Council, they themselves are the ones who would be troubled if real war were eliminated from the world. Therefore, it is unreasonable to expect them to maintain peace in the world. Many countries think that it is impossible to take away the privilege of the permanent membership of the Security Council. But they are wrong. In 1971, you may remember, the Chiang Kai-shek's Taiwan, Republic of China, which until then had been a permanent member of the UN Security Council, as a victorious nation in the World War II, was expelled from the UN by the General Assembly resolution. The second approach to resolving the ongoing exchange of violence in Palestine is for all religious authorities around the world to work with the leaders with the political and economic sectors to build an international order based on the rules that are more stable and widely accepted, because they are rooted in the share of moral and spiritual values. To this end, religion and religious authority must play the positive and constructive role, rather than divide societies. For religious authorities who have been accustomed for the hundreds of years to insist on the correctness of the doctrine of their own religion only, may be an acceptable pain. Only the reform and recontextualization of the doctrine of their own religion may be an unbearable pain. But unless religious authority accepts this pain, or argument will be self-rightness argument that do not reach the mind of our opponent, no different from those of fanatic terrorists or autocratic state leaders. This may seem like an unacceptable difficulty to religious leaders of the Abrahamic religions. But in the case of a conflict, whether it is quarrel between husband and wife or the war between states, to be convinced that your side is completely rightness and the other side is completely unrightness and indeed evil, will not solve the problem. Such a posture of the self-rightness combined with the demonization of one's adversary will instead close the door to any hope of solution. The world religious leaders must be adherents of the golden rules. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And the other precept, thou shalt not kill. Both of those teachings belong to the heart of the most of the religion around the world. Let us together raise the voice of religion in the dealing with violence and treat to the rule-based international order. Thank you for your attention. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Right Reverend Miyake. Thank you for the work that you've done over many, many decades, and your father and your grandfather's work on behalf of peace between religions and nations. Thank you very much for being with us again in Indonesia. I'm now delighted to introduce our friend, Dr. Henry Dong. Dr. Henry comes to us from Australia. He's originally from Vietnam, but is now a citizen of Australia. He is president of the organization Buddha Care, but that particular institutional affiliation does not capture the extraordinary range of Dr. Dang's activities. He has been involved in interfaith work in Southeast Asia for decades. He was a close friend of Abdurrahman Wahid before he became president of Indonesia. I believe he first met Abdurrahman Wahid some 30 years ago or more, and has been involved in interfaith work connecting Indonesia and Australia and other parts of this region for many, many, many years. He also has generously been involved in supporting suffering and struggling Buddhist communities around Southeast Asia. He's constantly traveling to visit and support Buddhist communities around this region. We're delighted that he was with us for the ASEAN Intercultural and Interreligious Dialogue Conference just a few weeks ago, and we're delighted that he's back with us in Indonesia today. So, Dr. Dang, thank you very much. Welcome to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tim Shah. Good afternoon, everybody. Your Excellency, Pak Yahya, General Chairman of the Nahdlatul Ulama Central Board, and also founding Chairman G20 Religion Forum. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed my great pleasure and honor to be here today to join you in this significant gathering and to extend my gratitude and appreciation to the government of Indonesia, Nahdlatul Ulama, the Center for Shared Civilizational Values, and the G20 Religion Forum for convening this R20 summit. Due to time limitation, I would like to share with you just a few reflections of mine on three issues. One, religion role. Two, conflicts over territory claims. Three, sustainable peace. One, religion's role. Spiritual and religious leaders are expected to no longer remain silent, living the life of humanity and living beings in general in the hands of the political leaders, especially those who just want to harness more power and benefit regardless of others' suffering and well-being is not a reasonable decision. There is an urgent need for the world's spiritual leaders to stand up in an united and coordinated voice to ensure that the political leaders follow the right path, and that our religious leaders serve as a genuine, dynamic, and sustainable source of solutions. Because spiritual leaders have a mandate to work for and take care of the well-being and happiness, both material and spiritual, of living beings. The suggested fundamental grounds on which the spiritual leaders can base themselves to engage and respond to the world's accelerating violence and conflicts are: A, rules-based international order, as mentioned by the organizing committee and many speakers before me, is most likely regarded so far as a feasible, appropriate, and reasonable path. The United Nations Charter, procedures, and practices, regional and international agreements or conventions, and the international law and precedents endorsed by the majority of nations, though not perfect, need to be observed and put into practice in an effective way. B, share international civilizational values. C, the world's common moral and spiritual values originating from the prominent religions and cultures concerned. The extent to which the spiritual leaders can get involved and committed will be carefully discussed and stated in a charter or agreement, which we can discuss further. Number 2, conflict over territory claims. This is a long-standing and difficult one. I think any just and sustainable solution to the territorial conflicts is expected to serve the best interests and well-being of people currently residing in the conflicting territories, not only to meet the requirements of the relevant political leaders and powerful nations. Number 3, sustainable peace. Peace has been talked about so often and so much, particularly after the Second World War. It is a belief that if we do not have a peace in mind, in heart, namely inner peace, how can we have a peace in our family, our community, our country, and in the world? Peace should start from within, from each individual, each community. Outer peace without inner peace is not a sustainable peace. Either chanting, praying, or meditation on a daily basis is a good practice for peace. Peace education also plays an important role in our long journey towards world peace. The ongoing devastating wars in Ukraine and Gaza, in whatever name being propagated by both sides and their allies, are shattering and destroying countless living beings and their homes. Kidnapping and killing, whatever excuse they take, are criminal acts under the international law and local law, I believe, which should be condemned. As a war veteran who witnesses the inhuman killing in several terrible, barbarous battlefields 50 years ago, and I also witnessed the heartbroken death of my mother, brother, my cousin, and friends of mine. I fully understand and share the utmost sufferings and losses of the war victims over there. What can we do now? May I suggest 2 urgent actions which can be taken by the religious and spiritual leaders and authorities. 1, This summit immediately forms an ad hoc mission of religious authorities to visit Gaza with humanitarian aid in collaboration with the United Nations and the governments of Qatar, Israel, Palestine, and other countries and institutions concerned. This mission anticipated aims are suggested as follows. A, to provide ad hoc humanitarian aid and services to the most needed. B, to secure the release of hostages held by Hamas. C, to call and push for an appropriate ceasefire to evacuate and save the innocent. D, to explore a best possible solution to that region's long-term conflicts. Nahdlatul Ulama, the world's biggest Islamic organization, is believed to be in the best position to coordinate and lead the mission. I have no hesitation in making my contribution to, and if required, to join this mission. The second suggestion I would like to submit for your consideration is this summit calls for and sets the Day of Global Prayer Meditation for Peace. This day is to be jointly conducted by all religious leaders in each and every country. This global significant event on the same day would certainly send a super powerful peace message to all, particularly to the political authorities. May the spiritual authorities unite in love, compassion, and wisdom to abolish the cycle of greed, hatred, tyranny, and violence. May the merit made by all of us during this summit be shared by all living beings. May they live a happy life, free from greed, hatred, and ignorance. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Henry, for that exceptionally powerful and moving set of remarks and your very practical suggestions. Sister Lo Pai Ling is our next speaker. She comes to us from Malaysia. She's president of the Buddhist Missionary Society of Malaysia. It's a pleasure to welcome Sister Lo Pai Ling back to Jakarta. Sister Pai Ling was with us for the ASEAN IIDC meeting just a few weeks ago and has graciously agreed to join us once again. She delivered a very beautiful message on the occasion from the great Venerable Mahinda Mahathira, Bhante Mahathira, who is the spiritual leader of your movement in Malaysia. And we ask you to please carry our greetings back to Venerable Mahinda, if you would, please. Lo Pai Ling, or fondly known as Sister Pai Ling, is a lawyer by training. She graduated with an LLB degree from the University of London, with a master's degree in business administration from the University of Hull. She has been serving with the Buddhist Missionary Society of Malaysia in its various branches and sections for many, many years, for more than 20 years. And once again, she joined us at the ASEAN IIDC just a couple of months ago. Sister Lo Pai Ling, welcome back to Jakarta. We look forward to hearing your remarks.
Thank you, Dr.
Terima kasih, Dr. Tim.
Honorable Mr.
Kiai Hadi
Yahya, founding chairman of the R20 Indonesia. ketua dari
and also
Argentina
the Chemen of
Indonesia, dan
Nahdlatul
ketua
Ulama,
pimpinan dari
Central Board.
Nahdlatul Ulama dari
Respected
PBNU,
leaders of the
para pimpinan
various
yang kami hormati
religions,
dari
distinguished
semua agama di
panelists,
sini, para panelis yang kami
delegates,
hormati, para
and
delegasi
participants,
dan para peserta,
ladies and gentlemen,
para hadirin yang kami hormati.
peace greeting from Malaysia. Salam
Salam
sejahtera.
sejahtera dan damai dari Malaysia.
Hatred never cease through hatred in this world.
Kebencian tidak berhenti
To
di
love
dunia
alone,
ini.
they cease.
Sekedar mencintai, ini merupakan pertahanan terhadap kebencian.
The silence was intentional.
Keheningan itu memang
It is for the
sengaja.
words
Ini adalah
to
agar
sink in.
kata-kata ini benar-benar
Ladies
masuk
and
dalam
gentlemen,
benak Bapak
the
Ibu.
Buddha
Kehadiran
uttered
The Buddha
these words
mengatakan
more than
kata-kata ini
2,600 years ago
lebih dari
and
2.600
emphasized
tahun
then
yang lalu dan menekankan
this
pada
is
saat
the
itu bahwa
eternal law,
ini adalah
which he
undang-undang
meant
abadi. Yang beliau maksud
ageless
adalah
wisdom.
ini adalah kebijaksanaan yang tak
The
lekang dengan
principle
waktu.
that hatred
Prinsip-prinsip
is never
bahwa
overcome
kebencian
by
tidak pernah
hatred,
diatasi oleh
but by
kebencian,
love and love
melainkan
alone
dengan hanya
is
cinta yang
indeed
bisa
ageless
mengatasi
and
dan tak
still
lekang dengan
rings
waktu,
true.
dan ini ada
More
kebenaran
so
yang masih
amid
sejati, dan juga
the
di tengah
current troubling times of the
saat-saat
conflict
yang
in the
sulit
Middle
dalam
East.
adanya konflik di Timur Tengah ini.
In the suffering
Dan
stemming
penderitaan
from
yang
political,
berakar dari
religious, but sadly
politik, dari
humanitarian
agama, dan juga
dimensions
dimensi
and
humaniter.
proportions. The love referred by the Buddha is
Secinta
very
yang
much needed.
disabdakan oleh Buddha
All
sangat
religions
penting. Semua
All religions
agama
advocate love, but in the
mengadvokasi
Buddhist
kasih
perspective,
sayang. Dalam
it
perspektif
extends
Buddha,
beyond love
ini
as
bukan
generally
hanya cinta,
understood.
kasih sayang
The
seperti
love
definisi yang kita
or
pahami.
avera in Pali,
Kasih sayang atau
as
avera
spoken by
impali
the Buddha,
yang disabdakan oleh
in the
Buddha,
words I read out in English,
kata-kata yang saya baca
refer
dalam
to
bahasa Inggris
non-anger
merujuk
and
pada
non-hatred.
tidak
The
adanya
Buddha
kemarahan,
advocates
tidak
the
ada
practice
kebencian.
of metta,
Buddha
which has been
mengadvokasi
translated
praktek
as
metta,
loving kindness.
yaitu loving
This
kindness,
combination
rasa
of
sayang,
love
kasih sayang
and
dan
kindness
cinta.
use a
Dan
mental
himbauan
state
ini
of love
menggunakan
that is unconditional,
meta-state, yaitu
boundless,
cinta yang
and
tidak
without
tanpa
exceptions.
syarat, tanpa
Allow me
pengecualian, dan tanpa
here
batas. Izinkan saya
To
di
share with
sini
you two
untuk
verses
berbagi
in the
dua
Karanya
ayat
Metta Sutta,
dari
which the
Karanya
Buddha
Metta Sutra
uttered to a group of
yang
monks,
disabdakan
actually
pada
500
biksu
monks.
di antara
The
500
first
biksu.
verse is
Ayat pertama
in Pali,
dalam bahasa Pali,
Ditta wa ye wa adita, ye che dure wasanti avi ture, Buddha wa sambhava siwa, sabe satta bawantu sukitata. In English mean visible
bahasa
or
Inggris.
invisible,
Mereka
those
sama atau
dwelling
tidak,
far
mereka
or
yang
near,
tinggal dekat
those
atau
born
jauh,
and yet to be
mereka
born.
yang sudah
May
lahir atau
all
belum lahir,
beings without
semoga semua makhluk
exceptions
hidup tanpa
be happy.
kecualian.
The second
Semoga mereka
verse
berbahagia.
in Pali is
Ayat kedua dalam
Matta
bahasa Pali,
Yatta Niyang Butang Ayusa Eka Buddha Manurake Evambe Sappe Butesu Mana Sambhavaye Abarimanang. In English means just
dalam
as
bahasa
a
Inggris,
mother will
sebagai
protect her
ibu
only child
yang
at the
melindungi
risk of her own
anak
life,
tunggalnya,
even
dan
so,
bersedia
towards
mengorbankan,
all beings, one should
melakukan
cultivate
sama
a
dengan
boundless
makhluk hidup.
heart.
Kita harus memiliki hati yang
Metta
tanpa batas,
together with
Metta
karuna
bersama dengan
or
karuna
compassion,
atau
the
belas
two of
kasihan.
sublime states of
Dua
mind which the Buddha
pola pikir ini
underscore
yang
as
digarisbawahi oleh
essential
Buddha
for
sebagai hal yang
cultivation
penting untuk
will
membimbing.
generate
Hal ini akan menghasilkan
understanding of avoidance of
pemahaman
harm
bagaimana menghindari
to others
penyakit
and build
lainnya,
bridges
dan membangun
to help
jembatan
heal
untuk
and
membantu
reconcile
menyembuhkan
the conflict of the
dan
wounded
membantu
relationships
mereka yang
between
hubungan yang
parties.
terluka antara para pihak.
Quarrels can never come to
Kelahiran
an end
tidak akan
by
pernah
quarreling.
berakhir dengan terus
War
berkelahi.
can
Perang
never
tidak
end
akan pernah
through
berhenti.
further wars.
Apabila
Enmity
diatasi dengan
never
perang,
end by
permusuhan
returning
tidak
enmity
pernah
for enmity.
bisa
By
berakhir
giving
apa
up
saling berbalas
anger,
kebencian.
enmity, quarreling,
Dengan
and wars, can this evil be stopped?
Menyerahkan dengan
It is
berserah
through
diri,
friendliness,
melepas kemarahan,
forgiving,
kebencian,
and forgetting
merasa maaf dan
that
melupakan,
enmity ceases.
rasa permusuhan
Ladies
inilah
and
yang
gentlemen,
diperlukan para hadirin
on
yang
that
kami
note,
hormati.
I sum
Dengan
up the
itu,
Buddhist perspective
saya
that is
menyimpulkan
inclined
perspektif
towards
Buddha
peace
yang cenderung
and
ke
non-violence.
perdamaian dan non-kekerasan.
In conclusions,
Sebagai
I
kesimpulan,
applaud the initiative and efforts of
upaya-upaya
convening this
dan
R20
penyelenggaraan
Summit of International
KTT
Religious
untuk
Authorities,
ISORA ini
in short,
secara singkat,
ISORA, I call it,
yang disebut
2023,
ISORA
for a meeting
2023.
of minds
Terima
for
kasih atas
religion to
mengumpulkan
be
para
part of the
pemikir
solution
pemuka agama
and
menjadi
not
bagian dari solusi
the source of
dan
conflict
tidak
and
menjadi sumber
the
konflik
divisive factor
dan
in the
faktor
prevailing
pemecah
conflict in the
dalam
Middle
konflik yang
East.
tengah berlangsung di
I
Timur
thank the
Tengah.
organizer
Terima kasih pada
of
para panitia
ISORA
penyelenggara
for this
ISORA
opportunity
atas
to present
kesempatan
the
untuk
Buddhist
mempresentasikan
perspective
perspektif
and
Buddha
contribute to
pada
this
scene ini
peaceful
dan berkontribusi
dialogue
dalam
for
dialog
conflict
perdamaian
resolution
untuk penyelesaian
through
konflik ini
non-violence
melalui
means.
cara-cara
Thank you.
non-kekerasan.
Terima kasih. Salam.
Thank you very much, Sister Lopailing, for those
Terima
beautiful,
kasih,
beautiful
Lopailing,
words and
atas kata-kata yang
beautiful
sangat indah
call to unconditional
dan
love
seruan
as the solution
untuk,
to
kasih
these terrible conflicts we
tanpa
see around the world.
kondisi untuk menyikapi
Our next speaker is Haji
konflik-konflik
Syed
yang kita lihat
Salman
di
Chishti, my
berbagai
brother
negara.
from
Berikut
India,
ini,
who
kami
comes
kasih
to us
saudara
from
kita dari
the
India
Chishti Sufi
yang datang
family of
dari
Ajmer Sharif,
keluarga Sufi
whose family
di mana
have been the hereditary custodians, the
keluarganya
Gadi Nashin of the
merupakan
11th century
penjaga
Sufi shrine of Hazrat Khawaja Moinuddin Hassan Chishti. Salman Chishti's work involves the research of Sufi traditions and their interaction with global cultures and traditions. He's a regular participant in international conferences on interfaith dialogue and has represented the Chishti Foundation in many, many forums all across the world. Salman Chishti was a part of our Hour 20 summit last year in Bali. He was with us for the ASEAN IEDC just a few months ago, and we're deeply grateful to you, Haji Salman Syed Chishti, for joining us once again. Welcome back to Indonesia. Thank you.
Anda bersedia bergabung. Selamat datang.
A'udzubillahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalatu wassalamu alayka ya sayyidal mursalin wa rahmatan lil alamin. Greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum to all the elders, spiritual leaders,
Saya ingin
as we extend
menyambut semua
our regards to Honorable
peserta
Chair,
hadirin,
Mr. President, who had incredible remarks to this
Bapak
opening.
Presiden tadi pagi menyampaikan sambutannya yang luar biasa.
All the senior officials of Nahdlatul Ulama,
Dan
respected
semua
sisters and brothers.
Temukan ada
Distinguished
ulama,
guests, I hope you all are well and blessed with good health.
saudara-saudara sekalian.
As today, on a very courageous
Hari ini
and a much needed call of
adalah
Nahdlatul Ulama
seruan yang sangat diperlukan
in calling
Nahdlatul
the
Ulama
International Summit of Religious Authorities
menyerukan
to address a concern which is affecting the hearts, mind, body and soul of all
semua benak pikiran,
who are part of this world,
hati dan tubuh
whether
semua
Mashriq or
yang ada
Maghrib,
di sini.
East or the West. I would like to share
Saya ingin
some of the holy verses of the Quran Sharif that
membacakan
emphasize on
beberapa
peace, justice and resolving conflicts.
Quran yang fokus
As we
pada
are all
penyelesaian
here from
konflik.
around the world
Kita
here in
semua di
Jakarta,
sini
Indonesia,
hadir dari berbagai belahan dunia.
to be part of the noble
Kita
intentions
menjadi bagian
and the
dari
sacred call of
tujuan
Nahdlatul Ulama,
mulia
the R20
Nahdlatul
Secretary,
Ulama,
in addressing the issue of religions,
dan melihat berbagai
role
agama,
for administrating Middle East
peran
violence and threats to a rule-based
menyikapi
international
kekerasan
order.
di Timur Tengah.
One of the Quranic verses
Salah
implies
satu
upon the freedom of religion and the way of non-compulsion
ayat Quran bicara
of faith
mengenai
in Surah Al-Baqarah.
kepercayaan di surah Baqarah.
There is no compulsion in religion.
Jadi tidak ada
The right way has
paksaan di
become
agama.
distinct from the
Cara
wrong way.
yang
Today we
tidak benar
stand
itu sudah
at a critical
berbeda
juncture in
atau
human
nampak
history,
dari jalan
facing the
salah.
urgent
Sekarang
need
kita
to
ada di
address the
titik
challenges
penting untuk bisa menyikapi tantangan.
emanating from the Middle East volatile landscape.
Jadi kita
As we delve
melihat
into the
lanskap
intricate
Timur
web of
Tengah,
religious role in
saat
shaping
kita
this
melihat
region
peran agama
and
untuk
its impact
membentuk
on the
wilayah
global
dan
order.
dampaknya terhadap order global.
Let us not only examine the past and the present,
Mari
but
kita tidak
also
hanya
envision a
melihat
future built
masa
on
lalu,
principles of
masa
unity,
saat ini, tapi ke depan
understanding and
untuk melihat
respect.
prinsip-prinsip kebersatuan dan saling menghormati.
Another verses from the Holy Quran emphasize the clear implications of killing one innocent soul, proclaiming that doing so is equal to the killing of all mankind. Likewise, saving an innocent soul is equal to saving of all mankind. In Surah Al-Ma'idah,
menyelamatkan satu nyawa yang tidak
Allah
dapat
Subhanahu wa Ta'ala
menyelamatkan
says,
seluruh umat manusia. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala
because of that, we decreed upon the children of Israel that whosoever kills a soul unless for a soul, or for corruption done in the land, it is as if he had slain mankind entirely. And whosoever saves one, it is as if he has saved mankind entirely. I'm glad our host and the chairman of Nahdlatul Ulama, Sheikh Yahya Khalil, is here with us. As the Middle East, a region marked with a rich tapestry of diverse culture and faith, has unfortunately often been synonymous with conflict and instability. Religious and political differences have been weaponized, contributing to violence and posing significant threat to a rule-based international order. However, it is crucial to recognize that religion and faith-based understanding at its core holds the potential for transformative changes, a force that can guide us towards a more just and harmonious world. Today, in India and around the world, the Sikh community is celebrating the birth of one of the revered Guru Nanak. As the Indonesian citizens also have deep respect to the elders, spiritual masters, and the teachings of Wali Sangguns, the great awliyas in the land of Indonesia. The teachings from our land is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the whole world is one family. And it is quite understandably if somewhere around the world part of the family are being disturbed, we should be concerned and our understanding to come together to address those issues in a realistic manner will lead us to a greater understanding and cooperative way of leading the future and the present generation into betterment. Another holy verses of the Quran Sharif and Surah Al-Hujurat remind us, O mankind, indeed we have created you from male and female and made you people and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. Indeed, Allah is knowing and acquainted. These holy verses of Quran have been guiding principles, and we must reflect on the holy scriptures. So does it is the responsibilities of the citizens of the world to make the world leaders responsible to their shared commitments when we choose our leadership, when we choose those leaders to represent us as a voice in the part of the world. In our pursuit of long-term solution, we must acknowledge the insidious impact of political weaponization of identity, the manipulation of religion and cultural identities for political gains has perpetuated division, deepening the fault line within our society. To counter this, we must strive to build a global consensus to preventing the misuse of identity as a political tool. Again, as per the teachings of the saints and the gurus that I come from the land of India, an era has gone by with the teachings of Gandhian principles, where Mahatma Gandhi, who is globally known as the father of modern India, democratic principles. Again, a respected elders from Indonesia is also known as same as the Gandhian principle, where Mahatma Gandhi is asked and has said that an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind. Maybe I'm going a bit off script, but today, when we're talking about the international rule-based understanding of conflict resolution, wars, humanitarian crisis, and opening the heart
dan membuka hati
towards those who are
bagi mereka yang
at this moment in
saat
those
ini
crises.
mengalami krisis.
We definitely condemn
Kita
any act of
mengutuk
violence
semua
in the name of
tindakan
faith,
kekerasan
in the name of
atas nama
religion.
kepercayaan agama.
But at the same time,
Tapi pada waktu yang
we can't be
bersamaan,
blinded,
kita tidak
or we
boleh
just can't be
dibutakan,
silenced
kita tidak
when
boleh
in
diam saat
this principle of Gandhian is being
prinsip
kept on a bay and for an eye, entire neighborhoods,
prinsip
entire
Gandhi,
societies,
di mana kita melihat satu wilayah, satu
entire
masyarakat,
landscape
satu
is being turned into
landscape
rebels,
ini dihancurkan,
turned into graveyards.
menjadi kuburan.
International bodies like the United
Badan
Nations
internasional
or the
seperti
most
PBB,
powerful organizations, so-called organizations,
organisasi
have been, their
yang
presidents
katanya terkuat sedunia,
have been
presiden-presiden
calling
mereka sudah
every day in and out,
memanggil setiap hari,
issuing
menyerukan,
statements, calling for a ceasefire,
menyerukan
calling for a
pernyataan,
humanitarian
meminta
corridor.
gencatan senjata, minta
But
koridor
all those calls
kemanusiaan. Tapi
are
semua seruan tersebut
falling on deaf ears
itu tidak
as
didengarkan.
no corroborative and no realistic
Jadi
initiative has been taken to
tidak
stop
ada inisiatif realistis
a
dilakukan
genocidal act
untuk
of
menghentikan
innocent
genosida,
women, children
genosida
on either side.
membunuh perempuan dan anak.
As today at the beginning of the
kedua belah
presidential
pihak.
remark,
Dan di awal acara hari
respected
ini,
President of
disampaikan
Indonesia truly call upon
Presiden
to all the
Indonesia
religious leaders,
mengingatkan
and I'm sure this will make an
agama
impact
dan
outside
akan
this
berdampak
magnificent
di
ballroom
luar ruang
As-
ballroom yang sangat indah ini.
to this consensus that we all come here and
Berkaitan
try
dengan
to understand
konsensus, di mana
that
kita
what
semua
the world that
datang
we are
dan
living in
melihat
must proceed with,
apa yang perlu dilakukan.
which is very central to cure the spread of communal hatred. No excuse
Berkaitan
should
dengan
be
penyelundupan
part of
kebencian.
this communal hatred and coming towards heavily to a group of people or a society just for the sake of the faith that they belong to. Religion, when distorted and misused, has been a conduit of animosity. Our shared responsibility is to foster an environment where differences are celebrated, not weaponized, where diversity is seen as a source of strength rather than a cause for conflict. By actively promoting tolerance and understanding, we can stem the tide of hatred and create a pathway towards coexistence. As Surah Al-Mumtana asks us that Allah does not forbid you from those who do not fight you because of religion and do not expel you from your homes, from being righteous towards them and acting justly towards them. Indeed, Allah loves those who act justly. Religion, when harnessed with the greater good, can be a guiding light in the endeavor. The spiritual principles that emphasize compassion, justice, and empathy can serve as beacon illuminating our path towards a more equitable and harmonious world. It is incumbent upon religious leaders to amplify these values, steering their communities away from divisiveness and towards a shared commitment to peace, in action and in words. In conclusion, the challenges posed by Middle East violence and the threats to a rule-based international order demands a holistic and visionary approach that transcends borders, religion, and cultures. A collective effort to prevent the political weaponization of identity, curb communal hatred, and promote solidarity and respect. Together, we can be part of this transformative journey towards a brighter future for our human fraternity and shared civilizational values. As I'm sure the global leadership is paying heed to the call of innocent civilians. India has always maintained a position of a just solution, a two-state solution of the conflict. Otherwise, we will be getting into deeper causes and conflicts which the present and the future generation can't endure. It is our collective responsibilities, and I, with folded hands and heavy heart, with the presence of all the spiritual leaders, presence of Sheikh Yahya, Nahdlatul Ulama, a very powerful body in its own rights, calling for moderate ways of coming together. Let's make the world leaders, our spiritual elders who are here, be part of those feelings and narrative that we are all here to. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon all of you. And we hope that we are not being called often for these conflict resolution. We are called in future for peace building and those initiatives which bring smiles to our heart and our soul. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Membuat hati dan penuh kita tersenyum. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you,
Terima
Haji
kasih,
Salman.
Haji Salman.
Ziyad Tishti, Bahut Shukriya. Thank you very, very much. Our next speaker
Pembicara berikut
is Rabbi
adalah
Yaakov Meir
Rabbi
Nagan,
Yaakov,
who is a rabbi and author who grew up in the United States but is now
tumbuh besar
based
di
in
Amerika
Israel
Serikat, tapi sekarang
with
tinggal
his
di
remarkable
Israel,
wife,
dan
Mikal,
istrinya
who is
yang luar biasa,
also a
Mikal.
great religious authority and teacher.
Dan
Mikal and Rabbi
Mikal
Nagan
dan
have
Rabbi
7
Nagan
children.
punya 7 anak.
He is a leader, Rabbi Nagan,
Rabbi
in
Nagan
interfaith dialogue,
adalah
and in
pemimpin
particular interfaith
dialog
peace
antar,
initiatives
lintas
between
agama dan
Judaism and Islam.
melakukan inisiatif
He's the
berdamai
director of the
antara
Blickle Institute for
Judaism dan
Interfaith
Islam
Dialogue
dan
and the Beit Midrash for Judaism and Humanity.
sudah
Rabbi Nagan also
menulis 4
teaches at
buku
Yeshivat
dan
Atniel
ratusan artikel
and has written
tentang
extensively in numerous books and writings about Jewish philosophy, about the Talmud, and also about relations between Judaism and other religions. Rabbi Nagan was with us at the R20 Summit in Bali, has graciously agreed to join us again. Thank you very much, Rabbi Nagan. We look forward to hearing your remarks. Welcome. Welcome back to Indonesia.
Kami sudah tidak sabar untuk mendengar sambutan
I think you need
Anda.
it.
Selamat datang kembali di Indonesia.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. B'Shem El Rachum v'Chanun. These holy words in the Arabic of the Quran, in the Hebrew of the Bible, not only in their sound, but their content is so similar.
Isinya
In the
begitu
name
mirip.
of God, the compassionate and the merciful. If these words would truly not be only on our lips,
bukan hanya di
but
bibir
guide
saja,
our heads,
melainkan
guide our
membantu pikiran
hearts,
kita,
guide our
memandu
hands,
hati
that
kita,
we would
tangan kita,
align
dan kita
our
akan
lives,
selaras.
our doing
Kehidupan kita, apapun
with
yang
the
kita lakukan,
in the name of the compassionate God,
atas
this
nama
would
Allah,
heal our broken
ini akan
world. This would
mengobati
lead
dunia
to
kita.
religiously grounded declaration, universal declaration of human rights. But the reality we live in is so different than these lofty words.
Dari kata-kata
What has
menyebut
gone
nama Allah Maha
wrong?
Pengasih lagi Maha Penyayang,
It
apa
is
yang salah?
that too many
Bahwa
believe
terlalu banyak
that the
yang mempercayai
compassion
bahwa
and the mercy of God is for us, but it's not for
Allah
them.
yang Maha Pengasih, Maha Penyayang
Too
hanya untuk
many,
diri kita,
too
bukan untuk
few
lainnya.
believe
Sedikit sekali
that the
terlalu sedikit
compassion of
meyakini
God
bahwa
is for all
rasa kasih
of His
Allah adalah untuk
creations.
semua makhluk ciptaannya.
The great question
Pertanyaan
confronting
besar
religion in our
yang
global era
mengkonfrontasi agama dalam
which will
era global
determine
ini
the future
akan menentukan
welfare of humanity.
masa depan
Will our
umat
deep
manusia.
identities
Apakah identitas
pit
kita yang
us
dalam
against one another,
membuat kita saling bermusuhan,
or will they bring us
ataukah
together
menyatukan
like
kita
today
semua seperti hari ini
to build a noble
untuk
future
membangun masa depan
and
yang
share
bermartabat
in a
dan
great
berbagi
story
kisah
that
yang luar
all of
biasa
us have a part in.
di mana kita semua berkontribusi pada
Three
kisah itu.
wise words of the
Tiga
path that we must
kata-kata
take,
bijaksana
and
untuk
again,
jalur
what
yang
we are
harus kita
feeling here.
alami dan
Three
kita rasakan.
words.
3 kata.
Connection before
Koneksi
correction.
sebelum koreksi,
Words
atau
of the great
dalam kata-kata
Rumi.
kata
Beyond
kata-kata
right,
Rumi.
beyond
Atas
wrong,
kesalahan,
there is a field. There we will meet.
Ada padang di mana kita akan bertemu.
That field, that place of
Tempat itu,
connection,
tempat koneksi.
it's about
Ini
relationships.
adalah tentang hubungan.
Deep and authentic
Ini
relationships,
adalah hubungan
which will lead
yang
to deeply
otentik dan mendalam.
acknowledging and
Kita bisa
respecting
saling menghormati,
the deep
saling menghormati
identity of
identitas
the
mendalam
other.
dari orang lain.
Cultural ethnic, religious identities,
identitas
these are
kebudayaan,
not problems
ini bukan
to be
merupakan
ignored.
masalah
As
yang
if
harus
we ignore
diabaikan
them,
kalau
they're going to disappear.
Olah kalau kita
John
abaikan,
Lennon, this is what John Lennon hoped for when he sang, imagine there's no country,
tidak ada negara,
it's not hard to do,
tidak sulit untuk
nothing to
dilakukan,
kill or die for,
tidak ada yang akan dibunuh,
and no
kita tidak
religion
mengorbankan
too.
diri dan tidak ada
The
juga agama.
religious identities that we
Identitas
embrace,
keagamaan yang kita rangkul,
these are powerful
ini
realities.
merupakan realita-realita
The
yang
one question open
satu
to us,
pertanyaan yang terbuka untuk kita
will the power of these
adalah kekuatan
this
dari
reality,
realita ini,
will this destroy the world,
apakah ini menghancurkan
or will
dunia
this
ataukah
build the
ini
world?
akan membangun dunia?
It is vital that we
Penting
harness
untuk
our religions
kita
to accomplish the latter.
menggunakan kekuatan agama
Three
kita
steps are
untuk bisa
necessary
membangun dunia. Tiga
for this
langkah yang
to take
diperlukan
place.
agar ini bisa terjadi.
Number one,
Yang pertama,
we must build new
kita harus
but
membangun
deeply authentic, source-based,
sumber
theological, and
teologi yang
spiritual
otentik
paradigms
untuk
to
paradigma
grant,
teologi
to
sehingga
acknowledge
bisa
the legitimacy
mengakui legitimasi
of the identity
dari
of the other.
identitas pihak
And
lainnya.
it's not enough
Dan
to
tidak cukup
proclaim
untuk
that
memproklamirkan
someone say, my religion is about
agamaku
love, peace,
adalah
and
tentang
tolerance.
cinta,
If that's what you're
kasih
saying,
sayang, dan
you're
toleransi. Kalau itu
talking
Anda katakan,
about
Anda
yourself.
bicara tentang diri Anda
What we
sendiri.
need
Tapi
is
yang
to
kita
really
butuhkan adalah
see
betul-betul
and
melihat
acknowledge the
dan
other,
mengakui
to see the
lainnya,
good,
untuk
the
melihat
beauty,
hal-hal yang
the
indah dan
value,
baik dan
and the
nilai
blessing
dan
in the
berkah
other's identity.
dari identitas lainnya.
This doesn't include,
Ini tidak termasuk,
preclude that we
bukan berarti
can't to
kita
disagree
tidak
with one another,
tidak boleh
but
berbeda
we
pendapat,
must
tapi
achieve the
kita harus
realization
mencapai realisasi
in our
memahami
heads
di pemikiran
and in
kita
our hearts
dan di dalam hati kita
that the same God in whom I
bahwa
believe, to
Tuhan
whom I pray, that I
yang-
serve,
yang
is the
saya
same
layani,
that the
Tuhan yang saya
other
cintai adalah Tuhan yang
loves,
sama, yang dicintai,
serves,
yang
and is
dilayani,
beloved by God.
dan mereka
As
pun
the
dicintai
Quran
Tuhan,
says
seperti
in
dikatakan
Surah
Al-Quran dalam surat
Al-Ankabut,
Al-Ankabut.
do not argue with the followers of early revelation, Ahlul Kitab,
Jadi para
other than in
Ahlul
a most
Kitab,
kindly manner, unless it is those who are bent on evil doing.
jadi dalam
And
surat
say,
Al-Ankabut,
we believe in
kita
that which has been
meyakini
bestowed upon you from high upon us, as well as
Jadi
that
mereka yang beriman,
which
mereka
has
tidak
been
gila lagi dan
bestowed upon you. For our God
jadi dari Tuhan
and
kami
your God
dan
is
Tuhan
one
kamu adalah satu
and the same,
dan sama,
and it is to Him that we
Dan-
all surrender ourselves.
dan kita semua berserah diri kepada
This belief
Tuhan yang sama.
will help unite our
Keyakinan
hearts
kami
and
akan
allow
menyatukan hati kita
religion
dan
to
agama
function as a
bisa
genuine
berfungsi
and dynamic solution
sebagai
to the world's
solusi yang
problem.
pada
And number
solusi
two,
pada permasalahan dunia.
these
Dan
theological
dua,
paradigms
paradigma teologi
must be
ini
massively
harus
disseminated to our respective
disosialisasikan
communities
ke
if we
komunitas
really
kita
want to
macam-macam
change the world.
bersama-sama apabila kita betul-betul
This
ingin
is a
mengubah dunia.
long-term
Ini
process
adalah proses
that must
jangka
include
panjang.
education
Ini harus
and
meliputi
media.
pendidikan dan
And we must
media.
begin
Dan
this
kita harus
process.
memulai proses
And
ini.
finally, number three,
Dan nomor 3,
real life encounters with other
pertemuan
communities. This can develop
dengan komunitas
respect
lainnya
and
sehingga
acknowledgement of the other.
membina rasa saling hormat dan saling mengakui
Relationships
hubungan-hubungan
are the key to establish the
adalah
empathy
cara
and the
untuk
trust
membina empati dan
that
rasa
are
saling
essential
percaya yang
to
sangat
correct
penting
our
untuk
beliefs
mengkoreksi
regarding the
kepercayaan
others.
kita tentang yang lainnya.
But this change should
Namun
be
perubahan
mutual,
ini harus
parallel paths in our respective
berjalur-jalur
religion.
dalam
This will accelerate the
dan ini
process.
akan mengakselerasi
And finally,
prosesnya dan pada
I'm deeply
akhirnya
touched
saya
and
sangat tersentuh,
grateful
saya begitu
that this
berterima
summit
kasih
is being held
bahwa
in the Republic of
G20 ini
Indonesia, whose
diselenggarakan Republik
motto,
Indonesia
I'll probably
yang
mispronounce, Bini
motonya
Togol
adalah
Aika,
Bhinneka Tunggal
unity
Ika.
within diversity. This is the essence
Beragam tapi
of the
satu, ini
shared
adalah
vision
inti
that
dari
I
visi
hope
bersama
and
yang
pray
saya harap dan saya
will
berdoa
soon
akan segera
encompass the world. If
meliputi
the
seluruh
Bible
dunia.
talks about
Apabila Injil berbicara
Torah or
tentang
light coming from
Torah
Zion,
Dan
I've learned to love Indonesia,
saya belajar
and
untuk
from
cinta Indonesia, dan dari
will
Indonesia
come light,
akan datang
the light that we
cahaya
need to enlighten
yang
the
kita
world.
perlukan
Thank
untuk
you.
menyinari dunia. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Rabbi
Terima
Nagen,
kasih,
and
Rabbi
thank you for
Nagen.
making
Dan
the
terima
trip
kasih
all the
sudah
way
melakukan perjalanan
to
jauh-jauh ke
Indonesia, which we
Indonesia.
had to do in part before Shabbat, and
Sebelum
then you
Shabbat,
finished the trip
lalu
from
anu
Singapore to
dari
Indonesia,
Singapura ke
and thank you for
Indonesia.
your beautiful words and
Terima kasih.
true call to action.
Dan seruan
Finally, it's
untuk
my pleasure to
aksi Anda.
introduce Sheikh Kabir
Saya akan
Helminski.
mengenal Sheikh Kabir
Sheikh Kabir is also a
Sheikh Kabir
longtime friend of
juga
Nahdlatul
sahabat
Ulama,
lama
of the
Nahdlatul
movement
Ulama,
for humanitarian
gerakan
Islam.
untuk
Has written
Islam
eloquently
humanitar
about
yang
humanitarian
banyak
Islam.
menulis tentang
He has
Islam.
an extraordinary
Dia
background as a
memiliki
scholar
latar belakang
and
sebagai
religious
cendekiawan
authority.
dan
Rabbi Nagen just quoted Rumi.
pengampu
Sheikh Kabir Helminski happens to be a
kewenangan
great
agama.
scholar of
Sheikh Kabir
Rumi.
Helminski
His
adalah
foundation,
peneliti
Threshold
Rumi,
Society, is
seperti yang
rooted
dikutip
in
oleh
fact in the
Rabbi
traditions of
yang
Sufism
sebelumnya,
and
dan
is inspired by the life and work of
terinspirasi
Rumi.
atau pekerjaan
Sheikh
Rumi.
Helminski is an
Sheikh
author, a translator of the
penulis,
works of
penerjemah
Rumi and
dari
others.
tulisan
He is a
Rumi dan
sheikh
lainnya.
in the
Beliau adalah
Mevlevi
Sheikh
order,
di
which traces its
Ordo
origins all the
Mevlevi,
way back to
asal
Rumi
usulnya dari
himself, if I
Rumi
understand
sendiri kalau
correctly.
saya tidak
He's
salah
authored
paham.
some of the finest
Beliau
modern
menulis
English translations of Rumi's
terjemahan bahasa
poetry,
Inggris dari
and is the author of two contemporary
puisi Rumi dan
classics
juga
on
klasik-klasik
Sufism,
tentang
which have been published
Sufisme
into at least
yang
12
telah
languages:
diterjemahkan ke
Living
12
Presence,
bahasa.
The Sufi Path to Mindfulness and the
Living
Essential
Presence,
Self,
Sufi Path,
and the
Essential
Knowing
Self,
Heart,
dan
a Sufi
Knowing Heart,
Path
Sufi
of
Path
Transformation.
of
Sheikh
Transformation.
Helminski was also
Sheikh
with us in
Helminski juga
Bali
bersama-sama dengan
and
kita di Bali
Yogyakarta last
dan
year,
Yogyakarta
and we're delighted to
tahun
welcome
lalu,
you back to
dan senang sekali bisa
Indonesia.
menyambut Anda
Sheikh
kembali ke
Helminski.
Indonesia. Sheikh Helminski.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I ask God's guidance in this and in all things. In recent weeks, months, I found myself sometimes filled with rage at the cruelties, lawlessness, hypocrisies of the world. And at the same time, a part of me knows and trusts that the divine has things in order, and that's where my trust lies. Today, I'd like to move beyond the arguments to try and find a more transcendent perspective, a perspective that hopefully will make sense to various religious communities, as well as people of no religion, atheists, human beings. Yes, to find that point of reconciliation, that point of common humanity. And so I've chosen as my theme the subject of human dignity. Much of the injustice, oppression, and violence in the world today is rooted in the primal egoistic tendency of one tribe, community, or nation to pursue self-interest at the expense of others. These power games have been the way of the world for a long, long time. And beyond a certain point, injustice and oppression may provoke the violence of terrorism, typically as a response of the powerless in the face of overwhelming injustice. And finally, religion and other ideologies may be hijacked to serve a triumphalist agenda, as in the case of radical Islam or radical Zionism. Violence begets trauma. Trauma begets violence. And violence begets vengeance. And vengeance begets more trauma. An endless cycle. One can argue whether human beings are naturally cooperative or selfishly aggressive. But most people just want to be free to live their lives. Hatred is learned. All forms of violence and oppression are licensed by the dehumanization of others. The dehumanizing of others becomes a disease of the soul. When religion becomes a rationale for aggression, it is not religion. The annihilationist rhetoric of fanaticism betrays the purpose of religion. Authentic religion can only serve humanity as a whole. As Muslims, we assert that the Islamic perspective must never be a sectarian perspective. The rights of Muslims are no more and no less important than the rights of all human beings. It is more virtuous to defend the rights of communities other than one's own. There is less virtue in demanding rights from oneself than in protecting the rights of others. Those who become enraged by injustice and adopt an aggressive, hostile stance will inevitably create an opposite reaction. Blinded by the self-righteousness of the ego, they fail to see that they are driving away precisely what they intend to achieve. Them and us is a dangerous concept. There's only us. We are one human family. The saints and prophets, when persecuted for speaking truth, have tried to tell us we are the enemy of no one. Those who appear to be our enemies are actually enemies of themselves, imprisoned in their own selfish illusions and negativity. They harm their own souls and create their own suffering. In identifying shared civilizational values, the place of human dignity must be prominent. The all-compassionate God, speaking in the voice of the divine we, says in the Holy Quran, "Indeed, we have dignified the children of Adam, carried them on land and sea, nourished them with the pure sustenance of life." This verse proclaims that all human beings are honored by God with dignity, with nobility. Human dignity resides in those essential human capacities that include free will, self-awareness, conscience, empathy, compassion, and self-respect. Human dignity is expressed in the capacity to govern our selfish impulses and strategies, to counteract our irrational hatred and prejudice, to overcome our fear and anger. Human dignity is fulfilled in the freedom to travel the land, to express our ideas and beliefs, to be free of coercions, and to choose what we do with our own bodies. Increasingly, we're seeing a confrontation between two mentalities, one that is sourced in human dignity and one that is blind to it. I'm talking now about the challenges we face as a result of new technologies, including AI, etc.
dan lain sebagainya.
It is the contrast between a truly human culture and an authoritarian dystopia, between a culture of dignity and a soulless existence. We recognize human dignity in our ability to perceive the dimension of values, to sacrifice, to yearn, to aspire, to be in relationship with the mystery of the sacred. The human being is a creature standing at the threshold between the five-sense physical world and the invisible, transcendent dimension of the heart. Human dignity is sourced in the sacred and recognized by a sound heart. The cherishing of human dignity, the respect for our spiritual nature, is the remedy for the dehumanization that leads to violence and tyranny. If we can commit to the honoring of human dignity, we can break the cycle of perpetual trauma and discover new dimensions of beauty within our own selves, our communities, and our world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheikh
Terima kasih banyak,
Helminski.
Sheikh Helminski.
That was a remarkable conclusion to a remarkable series of
Ini adalah
talks.
akhir yang
I'm
luar biasa
struck that
dari
every single one of these
setiap
beautiful
dari
meditations
meditasi yang
really
indah
calls
ini
for
betul-betul
profound
menyuruhkan
contemplation
kontemplasi
and
yang
reception, interior reception,
dan
reception
penerimaan
within
di
the
dalam
depths of our
hati,
hearts,
dalam batin
and call for
kita.
action. And we would do well to meditate quietly on this remarkable array of presentations.
Dan ini luar biasa dari semua
However,
presentasi yang sudah kita
you may have
dengarkan.
questions and comments on what was said beyond contemplation. You may have argumentation or a
Mungkin
discussion
ada
you'd like to
diskusi
have
yang ingin
about
Anda
what was
lakukan.
said. So I repeat my invitation
Jadi saya undang
to
kembali.
anyone who'd like to ask a question or make a comment.
Jadi
We
silakan
have a
kalau ada
few minutes
komentar, kita punya waktu
for one or
beberapa
two
menit untuk
questions or
satu
comments
dua pertanyaan atau
before we
komentar.
close. So if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, I invite you to do so now, or if anyone would like to raise a question or pose a comment to a fellow panelist, you're welcome to do that as well, those of us on the stage. Otherwise, we are ready to conclude, if there is no one who'd like to make a comment or question, with a video address by Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, whom I introduced earlier. I believe the video is now ready to be displayed. But I see do we have a question from, yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I think, do we have a microphone that can go around?
Tolong mikrofonnya.
My friend from Muhammadiyah would like to
rekan kami
ask
dari
a question.
Muhammadiyah ingin mengajukan pertanyaan.
In the middle of the room.
Di tengah ruangan.
And please just introduce yourself with a line or two, and if you would just ask a brief question.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Rahma. I'm from the Women Wing Muhammadiyah and also from the Muhammadiyah Aid that having humanitarian overseas of Indonesia. I would like to have a comment and ask for the panel. Since this morning we already hear a call for respecting international order, and this afternoon we also hear the respecting other religious teaching and how it could influence. The issue that hasn't been addressing and actually is the strategy, how actually we will do it and move it fastly first. That's I would like to ask the comment. And then the second one, we know collectively we already condemn all violence and we not agree in all violence, we agree for love. But actually, how is the killing is still happen? And the issue is also the long-term recovery toward the impact of any conflict and war in the world today. So who responsible in it? And I just actually I'm addressing the Palestinian. In July I went to Palestine, and the livelihood the restriction of mobility is there. So we need to actually call for action, not only in narrative way, but how actually collectively driven the move.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that excellent two-part question.
Pertanyaan dengan dua bagian tersebut.
So, two-part question, what is our strategy for ending conflict, and then what's our strategy for helping victims of conflict recover from the violence that they've suffered? If I understand the question correctly, though, there were many different subparts to your question or comment. This was not directed at any one individual, but anyone who'd like can respond, or maybe one person would like to respond to one part of the question. Rabbi Nagan, would you had a very practical, in a sense, set of remarks which maybe respond, and then Rabbi Silvina.
Well, as I mentioned, the three words I mentioned, I feel it's really the key to everything. And I've been blessed with numerous Palestinian friends, both from Gaza, throughout the Palestinian territories, and from abroad. The connection, and actually these words, I believe I heard it first at a conference in Amman, Jordan. I think it was actually one of the Palestinian groups, of connection before correction is the deep disconnection that breeds the fear, and fear leads to hate, and hate leads to violence, to trauma, to that cycle. But I feel there is no short path, but the person-to-person connection to experience the humanity of the other, which makes them into a brother. If I had something gender-free, I would use it also. But I feel it is a long path, but we must make sure that we're going in the right direction. And the right direction, I feel, correction, there's such a sense of right and wrong and narratives, but it's the connection. I feel it is a long path, but we must take those steps ahead.
Thank you, Rabbi Nagan.
Thank you for your question. Sometimes I feel that when we participate in these opportunities, it's not necessary to convince the convinced. And this is my question too. How we do it massively, and we change our narratives. This was my issue at the beginning. And I think that we have to be courageous to make a profound revision of the programs of our religious leaders training. I mean that we are not revising our programs in each religion, how we train our future religious leaders. We are repeating continuously a structure that it's okay for another time of history, but we need to be courageous to make some changes, because the doctrine, we are not betraying any doctrine and any discipline if we are courageous enough to understand the message beneath every narrative, and which attitudes are born from these narratives to the good of the common good of humanity. This is my task. Personally, I'm working in my country to teach in different training priests and pastors institutions about the Judaism I have to share with the other people. So to make a revision on the Judaism that they are learning or they have inherited, and perhaps the messages in the future are going to be changed. Perhaps this is the time to go for the educational systems and ask them to revise with us the programming.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So now we'll hear from Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar via video.
I'm pleased to know that the Religious 20 Summit is happening in Indonesia. at a time when the world is undergoing severe crisis of clash between civilization and identities, it's time that religious leaders, decision makers, and responsible citizens from around the globe get together and think how we can avert these hatred and this fire of discontent and rage can be put off. The globe today has become a village. We are part of one human society. We have to bring this awareness of being together and appreciating each other and celebrating diversity. I am so glad that such an agenda has been part of the R20. My best wishes and congratulations to His Excellency Joko Widodo, the President of Indonesia, who have been of great support for R20. I know R20 has happened just a year or so before there in Indonesia. My representative were there. I was not able to be there due to my scheduling issues. And this time also I could not be physically present, but I am there with you all in all spirits. Let me here mention the effort of Kyahi Haji Yahya Choli Stakuf has been very relevant, especially when there are two wars being waged on the planet and thousands are suffering. It is time that we need to put off the hatred and the tension that is rising in the planet. So humanity can only survive if we build a global alliance of civilizations. It is much needed because suffering to anybody, anywhere on the planet is not going to remain isolated. It's going to spread across the globe and it will affect one and all. So let's not destroy our beautiful planet and the humanity that is here with such diverse ideas and faiths and religions. We all have to coexist, cooperate with each other, make life a celebration. Let me once again wish the best for all the delegates and the speakers of this wonderful conference, and may you have the success in reaching out this message of harmony in diversity to every nook and corner, especially places where people are suffering, where people have been impacted by communal tensions. And once again, I congratulate and wish the best for all of you.
That concludes plenary session 3. We'll just take a brief break before we then move to our next session, plenary session 4, in which we will read the R20 ISORA call to action. We've talked many times about the need to take action, to create a movement, to move forward, not just with words, but with deeds. And we'll soon have a reading of the R20 ISORA call to action, which we will conclude our conference with and adopt in just a few minutes. Thank you to our wonderful panelists. Thank you, all of you who participated. Thank you for your wonderful, beautiful, extraordinarily compelling remarks, one and all. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Timothy, for leading the plenary session 2. We again ask the speaker to stay on the stage because we're going to deliver the token of appreciation.
Okay. Untuk itu, dengan hormat, kami mohon Ketua Umum Pengurus Besar Nahdlatul Ulama berkenan untuk memberikan token appreciation kepada all speakers.
Again, here is it, the chairman of the Executive Board of Nahdlatul Ulama delivering the token of appreciation to all the speakers of the plenary Session 2. Well, we again inform all the participants that we directly continue to the next session. There will be R20 ISORA analysis and call to action. So after this, we will hold for a while. We don't have any breaks. We just continue to the next agenda. Again, here is it, the delivering of a token of appreciation to the speaker of panel session 2. Ladies and gentlemen, give a big round of applause for all the speakers and also moderator for today.
Dan setelah ini kita akan lanjutkan di sesi berikutnya, yaitu di sesi ketiga, pembacaan R20 ISORA Analysis and Call to Action. Untuk itu kami mohon segera Bapak Ibu tetap di tempat dan tidak meninggalkan ballroom.
Right, now we have a photo session. Again, we invite Gus Yahya to come to the middle of the delegates or the speakers in the middle, so we will have a photo session together. All right. Here you go. 1, 2, 3. Okay. 1, 2, and 3. All right, thank you very much, all the speakers, plenary session 2, and also the moderators, and also absolutely Gus Yahya delivering the token of appreciation. We're very happy that today we make it for the plenary session 1 and also plenary session 2.
That's after this we will directly to the third session.
Sekali lagi kami mohon kepada Bapak Ibu untuk tetap di ballroom. Kita akan melanjutkan ke acara selanjutnya. You to back to your seat. We are about to start the next agenda, which is R20 ISORA analysis and call to action. All the speakers, again we invite you to come back to your seat, and all the audience also, we invite you to stay inside the ballroom. We will continue to the next agenda.
Baik, kepada Bapak Ibu hadirin semuanya, kami mohon untuk berkenan tetap di tempat karena kita akan melanjutkan di sesi berikutnya, yaitu pembacaan R20 ISORA Analysis and Call to Action.
Baik, sekali lagi kami undang Bapak Ibu yang terhormat untuk kembali ke dalam ruangan. Kita akan melanjutkan ke sesi selanjutnya. We are all invite all the guests, delegates and speakers and participants to come back to the ballroom. We're about to start and continue to the next agenda.
Dan sebagaimana kita ketahui dan telah kita ikuti bersama tadi, Haruru, bahwa pengurus besar Nahdlatul Ulama telah menggambarkan peran pentingnya dalam menginisiasi isu-isu internasional, menunjukkan komitmen dalam mencari solusi bersama untuk menjunjung tinggi perdamaian. Dan tentunya melalui langkah-langkah proaktifnya, tadi pengurus besar Nahdlatul Ulama juga berperan sebagai agen perdamaian, membawa suara kearifan Islam untuk merespons tantangan global dan mempromosikan kolaborasi lintas negara.
Oke, yuk masuk.
Bapak dan Ibu hadirin yang kami hormati, Selanjutnya kita akan memasuki sesi yang ketiga, yaitu pembacaan R20, ISORA Analysis and Call to Action, yang akan disampaikan oleh Ketua Umum Pengurus Besar Nahdlatul Ulama. Kepada yang terhormat, Kiai Haji Yahya Khalil Stakuf, disilahkan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, before I read the R20 ISORA call to action that has been prepared by our team from Nahdlatul Ulama and Center for Shared Civilizational Values, led by three of our primary experts here, Pak Charles Holland Taylor, Dr. Najib Azka, and Thomas Dinham, and they've created a document, short document, after learning from all of your contributions. I will read the document that the team has been prepared, but before that, please allow me, on behalf of Nahdlatul Ulama and Center for Shared Civilizational Values, to express our utmost appreciation and gratitude to all of you, honorable speakers and participants, for your presence in this gathering and for your very, very valuable contributions to this cause. I understand that to just come here, go to Indonesia in this uneasy situation, it takes not just willingness, but also courage and maybe bravery, and of course trust that here you are going to meet trustful people, that trustful people who trust you also, and that we are truly have a shared desire to go together, work together hand in hand to contribute to our shared global civilization. One thing that is very important for us to keep in mind is that the conversation in these forums is not supposed to be only among the people who are present physically in this forum. It's not supposed to be just a conversation between Sheikh Salman Chisti and Rabbi Nagin, Imam Yahya Pallavicini, and so forth. But this conversation is supposed to be the reflection of the heart the hearts and minds of our people, of people and our respective communities. And further, everything that we express, that we share in this forum, great ideas, great contributions from all of you, including the one very great speech delivered by His Excellency General Secretary of Muslim World League, Sheikh Muhammad bin Abdul Karim Al Isa this morning. All of these are supposed to be projected back to our respective communities. This conversation is not only for us to hear. We have to bring this to our communities so they can also hear and learn from everything, every beautiful, important things that we all take from this conference. And the third thing I need to remind us all is that, like I already articulated this morning, that what we want, what we demand from this conference is not just an articulation, but a true plan, a real plan to act together. So here is the document of R20 ISORA call to action. Whereas religious authorities have a moral and spiritual responsibility to ensure that their respective faiths serve as vehicles of mutual understanding and reconciliation rather than perpetuate the primordial cycle of identity-based hatred, tyranny, and violence. Whereas the international consensus embodied within the UN Charter, United Nations Organization, and Universal Declaration of Human Rights provides the only currently existing and viable framework for resolving identity-based conflicts, including those that occur between religions and violence perpetrated in the name of religion. Whereas the failure of global actors to respect and uphold the post-World War II international consensus as embodied in the UN and UDHR framework is a primary cause of instability and conflict worldwide. Whereas religious authorities acting in service to God and humanity should persistently and decisively work together to validate, preserve, and strengthen the post-war international consensus and demand consistency from all parties in its application. Whereas it is not sufficient for these efforts to be confined to traditional religious appeals alone, they must be complemented by a deliberate long-term strategy to mobilize the collective power of religion, including the support of people from all faiths in a joint movement to attain this noble objective. Therefore, we urge religious authorities of every faith and nation to marshal the power and influence of their respective communities to impact decision-making circles, halt armed conflicts raging in Middle East, Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, and other regions of the world, and develop effective mechanisms for dialogue and negotiation that may lead towards the peaceful resolution of such conflicts. Ladies and gentlemen, this document hopefully will be the voice representing the aspiration of this conference, and hopefully it will be heard by others. At a time when the world is so full of turmoils driven by conflicting interests, economic or politics, economical interests and political interests, or other profane worldly interests, we, religious leaders and bearers of religious authorities, we have our own interests to make our faith truly present in the life, in the daily life, real life of our fellow people in our shared human civilization. So, like I said last night, we have quite a job to do. After this, we need to do immediate work. We in Indonesia, we will follow up this with an immediate movement. This morning, I spoke with President Joko Widodo, and I shared my idea of initiating a joint movement by all religious communities in a movement of prayers all together. So the idea is having like a month of prayer, not just a day of prayer, but a month of prayer, joined by all religious community in Indonesia, and to be held in various different places all over the country. And this afternoon, we have conversation with the religious leaders here from Muhammadiyah, from the Catholic community, from the Protestant community, Buddhist community, and so forth here. And we already have agreement that we all will go together for this. So next step, we will arrange something and a joint initiative between the religious communities in Indonesia and the government of Indonesia to make a strong voice on this aspiration. And we will also continue with various other concrete actions additional to what various communities already did, such as what our sister from Muhammadiyah mentioned just now. Many of the donation religious groups and communities already did various efforts to help relieve humanitarian problems in the area of conflicts. And we will do more. I will try to reach out to various entities domestically, including political parties, if necessary, to make a voice on this. And also, I would want to ask all of you to do the same in reaching out to any strategic entities, strategic actors that are within our reach, to ask them to hear our voice and to act accordingly. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your presence and your contributions. We are all belongs to Almighty God. We are all surrendering to His will. All that is in our power is to pray and ask for God's grace and help for all humanity and our shared civilization. Wallahul muwaffiq ila aqwamit thariq. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Kami mohon kepada Ketua Umum berkenan tetap di tempat karena akan dilanjutkan dengan sesi foto bersama para segenap delegasi dan juga seluruh peserta. Untuk itu kami mohon kepada segenap delegasi dan juga seluruh peserta untuk dapat berfoto bersama di atas panggung.
So we would like to invite all the participants, speakers, moderators to join us to have a photo session. We are all invite you to join for the photo session.
So that they